Just property management, just what you need. Just property management.
Hi and welcome to today's training on how to accurately submit a lodgement of security bond money form with the bond administrator and how to, at the end of a tenancy, initiate a joint application for disposal of security bond form 4. This process is of utmost importance and is strictly governed by certain time restraints. Failure to comply with section 29(4)(b), Schedule 1, Clause 2 of the Residential Tenancies Act 1987 will result in a fine penalty. The clause states, for the lodgement of security bond money form that, I quote, in the case of a real estate agent, under the Real Estate and Business Agents Act 1978, as soon as practicable after the agent's receipt of the bond. So we're very clear. At Just Property Management, this means that the bond needs to be lodged with the bond administrator at the latest by the next business day. I will now step you through the procedures that are to be followed strictly by Just Property Management. Whether you're using REST software or another accounting software package for your property management, the principles of lodging security bond money forms are all the same. How to lodge a bond form. To lodge a bond form, you need to complete all the relevant sections of the lodgement of security bond money form. This form and all other related forms are available online with the Department of Commerce at www.commerce.wa.gov.au/bond forms. How much bond can I collect for a residential tenancy bond? The bond must not be more than 4 times the weekly rent, and the pet bond must be no more than $260 if the tenant is allowed to keep a pet at the property. The only exception to this is if the premises is the principal private residence of the owner for the first 3 months before the tenancy was entered into. In this case, you should tick the box provided on the lodgement form. If you collect rent on a calendar month basis, the amount of bond must be no more than 4 weeks' rent. Do not collect the equivalent of a calendar's month rent for security bond. This would be greater than 4 weeks' rent and would be in breach of section 29 of the Residential Tenancies Act 1987. Department of Housing Bond Assistance. If the tenant received bond assistance from the Department of Housing, please attach a copy of the agreement that gives the Department of Housing files and application numbers. Providing the owner's name. Section 51 of the Residential Tenancies Act 1987 requires the full name of the owners to be given to the tenants. This information cannot be omitted because the owner doesn't want to reveal his or her identity. However, the owner may give the real estate agent's address instead, who is required to sign the bond lodgement form. The lodgement form must be signed by all the tenants and the owners or the real estate agent. Owners and/or real estate agents should obtain a copy of the signed lodgement form for their records. How to submit the form. Submit the completed form with the payment by direct debit, of which we will show you how it's to be done in just a moment. Processing the bond lodgement form. Bond administration will process the application and will then send a record of the payment of security bond to both the tenant and to Just Property Management. Change of owner or change of property management. If there is a change of ownership or property management, the owner of the property must complete a notice of variation of security bond and submit it to the department. These forms can also be completed online. We'll now step you through how this is to be done.
Once you have signed into the bonds online system, we need to lodge a new bond application. Now we need to state whether this is a residential park bond. In this case it's no, and then we need to state the rental property details. We then enter the suburb name, and this will automatically generate the postcode. We need to insert the tenancy start details, and from there we then go to the tenant details. We need to state if the tenant is an organisation. In this case it's not. and we then need to enter the tenant's surname. And any given names for the tenant, and any other names. We also need to enter the telephone number, and an email address if applicable. We can add multiple tenants if there is more than one tenant on the lease through the Add Tenant button. We then move on to the owner's details, and we need to state if the owner is an organisation, in this case it's not, and also if the owner is a park operator, in this case it's not. We need to then enter the owner's surname, and also the owner's given name. Any other names for the owner, and an address. We'll enter the suburb, and this will generate the postcode automatically. You need to enter the mobile number for the owner and a fax number and an email address if applicable. We can also add a new owner if there is multiple owners through the Add Owner button. Now the agent details will be generated automatically once you have a bonds online service, and if they need to be changed, they can be. From here we enter in the weekly rent amount and the total of the weekly 4 weeks rent. If there's any pet bond to be allocated, we'll put in the pet bond section, and the total security bond can be calculated through the calculate button. We need to state the date that the monies were paid from the tenant to the agent, and whether the premises, the residence of the owner in this case, no. We then need to select the payment method, and we select direct debit, and we need to enter in the bank name, the company name, the BSB and account number. Now these details will be saved once the first bond lodgement is validated. So once this is complete, we will validate the form. And we can then download the lodgement application form in order for the tenant to sign and in order for the owner to sign. Once this form has been signed by the tenant and also the owner, we can then send this form to the bond administration for process of the payment and also the lodgement of the bond.
How to initiate a joint application for disposal of security bond Form 4. You'll need a joint application of disposal of security bond Form 4. This can be completed online to speed up the process of the application. Please write the bond reference number on the disposal form. This number can be found on the record of payment of security bonds sent to Just Property Management and its tenants. The reference number quickly helps match the disposal forms with the original forms. The date on which the tenancy agreement ended. Please use the date of the tenant's last day of which the tenancy agreement ended. Signatures. The signatures on the disposal form must match all on the lodgement form. If any of the signatories have changed their names, they must use the same signature used at the start of the tenancy. Before submitting the form, check the signatures match all on the copy of the lodgement form that you have retained. If 3 tenants sign the original lodgement form, then all 3 must sign the disposal form. Not being able to match signatures on the disposal form with those on the lodgement form is the most common reason why an application of disposal is delayed or rejected and returned. Alterations and additions. The names of parties who are to receive money back can be changed and the amounts to be paid to them can be altered. But these changes must be verified by the full signature of all affected parties at the site of the change, or by way of signed note that clearly states that they all agree to the precise details of the change. Submitting the form. You should mail or deliver the form signed by all parties after they have read the information on the back of the form to the bond administrator at the Department of Commerce. We'll now show you how this is to be done.
When requesting a bond disposal, we need to select the property that we wish to have the bond disposed for, and we are going to check all three parties that they match and the amount, and we will request disposal. We are then to check the property address and put in the tenancy end date. We are then to allocate the amount for the tenant refund of the bond, and then to select the payment method. In this case, we will select cheque, and if tenant 2 is to be getting any bond refund, we would also allocate in here. We then are selecting how much is to come back to the agency for reimbursement of outstanding owner accounts, and we will select the payment method of cheque also. As you can see, we can now total up the bond amount to the current bond balance. We then scroll down and we validate this request. We are then to download the disposal application form, and this is to be signed by the tenant and also the agent. Once this process has been completed, we can then send off to the bond administration and await the disposal.
I cannot emphasise enough on the importance of lodging the bond as soon as practicable with the bond administrator. Just Property Management's company policy is to receipt the bond and lodge it as soon as possible with the bond administrator. This is urgent and important. If you have any further queries or require further information, please phone the Consumer Protection Advice Line on 1300 30 40 54.
Just property management, just what you need.